Call to order. Sandy, will you do roll call, please?
Councilperson Brenny?
Here.
Bruning?
Here.
Perry?
Yes.
Hanson?
Here.
McGinty?
Here.
Okay. Any conflicts of interest? Number 2 on the agenda.
No.
Okay, we'll move on to number 3, consent of agenda. A, approval of agenda. B, approval of the minutes of the December 23rd, 2014 council meeting. C, consideration of reappointing Earl Hardesty and Milo Lines to the Fine Arts Council. D, consideration of reappointing Laura Zimmerman to the Commercial Revolving Loan Fund Committee. E, consideration of reappointing Frank Strain to the Planning and Zoning Commission. F, consideration of reappointing Sammy Bruce, Jim Bullock, and Mike Vobble to the Community Center Board. G, consideration of reappointing Steve Irwin and Tom Munger to the Kids World Board. H, consideration of reappointing Steve Gary to the Historic Preservation Commission. I, consideration of approving the 2014 Annual Certified Local Government Report. J, consideration of advertising for a park custodian / campground host. K, consideration of advertising for a pool manager. And L, claims. Any discussion on any of the items A through L? There's a lot.
I would move passage of consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Sandy?
Councilperson Hanson?
Yes.
McGinty?
Yes.
Brenny?
Yes.
Bruning?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 4 on the agenda, citizens' opportunity to address the council on items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone present tonight that would like to address any? Okay. Move on to item number 5. Continuing business. A, update on development of joint urban development area with Sac County. Adam, you want to talk on that?
Sure, just very briefly to let you know, in your packet is a copy of information. It's a very good wealth of information on the process necessary to go through all the steps of setting this up. Quite a bit of the process is actually will be handed over to our friends at the county. However, what you'll see within here is just a description of it. If you had any questions moving forward, this really is a very good explanation. At some point there will be some public hearings. I've asked Dorsey and Whitney to help us draft up the information and to assist the county because we offered to set up and assist in the process of setting everything up for the county. So this has also been sent to Jim Dowling at the county so it can be handed out to the supervisors so everybody's on the same page as far as what the procedural requirements necessary for setting up the urban development area. Dorsey and Whitney was particularly happy to hear that it sounds like a lot of the language has already been talked over, and it sounds like there's a good amount of agreement between the two parties as far as what the final language will be, and that should shorten the process as we move forward with the steps. So expect over the next couple of months we'll be moving through the public hearing phase, the approval phase, and the final documentation phase.
Okay. B would be an update on the Sac City facade project.
Included in your packet, I only actually gave you the updated estimates page. And just to speak to that just briefly, you'll notice that the updated estimates actually exceed the planned budget for the project by about $60,000. However, I'm not too concerned about that at this point, only because, remember, we're still working in estimates. We won't really know what the numbers are until they actually come into the bid, and you would never expect the bid to actually match exactly what the estimates are expected to be. When the bids come in, at least it's within line of where we expect it to be, fairly close. That's a good sign. What happens is once the bids come in, then there will need to be a discussion held at that point. If it's over budget, there'll have to be a discussion on whether or not we take something is taken out of the project, or either some form of additional revenue is available for the project, whether that comes from the private side or the city side. If it comes in under the bid amount, the bid comes in under the proposed budget for the project. Then, of course, there could be potential discussions then about some of the things that were initially not allowed to be included. For instance, I think of at least one or two cases where signage wasn't allowed, even though the actual the candidate wanted it, it wasn't allowed. We also had one or two other candidates that wanted to do more extensive work on their buildings, but due to the financial limitations of the project, they decided to not expand beyond those current numbers. However, that's a discussion to have once we have actual numbers to work from. Right now, we're kind of in line with what we expect. I just put out an email notification to the business owners today. I received this documentation last Wednesday. I sent out a notice today to the business owners. I'm trying to schedule as many as necessary meetings on Friday of this week to go over final documentation with the business owners, because many of them have, while they may not be aware of it, many of them have not seen the documentation since potentially as long as last July. Even though the documentation from a SHPO standpoint is where it needed to be, I don't think that was clearly stated to them when they met with the architect back in July, and there was just a feeling that if anybody wanted to have follow-up meetings to evaluate what they had agreed to and where it stands, because when you go to SHPO and you go through the bid process, it's not everything is finite detail in those type of processes. So what we will do in that process is to show them what the information being shared with SHPO is, make sure that they're in agreement with what's going on, and provide them the new estimates, which I actually send every business owner a copy of the actual sheet that's included in your packet tonight, which includes the overall estimates for the project.
So when do we expect to get to a bid process?
Well, my understanding, and I would have to clarify this for a fact, but my understanding, based upon the communication back from Mr. Franks last week, was that the bidding process could be started in conjunction at the same time with the SHPO process. And that seemed, his email suggested that was his intent, was to do those at the same time.
What do you mean by starting in conjunction with the SHPO process?
While SHPO was reviewing the planned project for its approval, that the bidding process would be begun on for an architect. And then I would assume, based upon that theory, that if SHPO had any modifications that they required of the project, you would make those change orders as part of the bidding process, which is not unusual when we do with contractors for like road projects. If something changes in the project, you'll send out a notification of an update to the bidder packet for those purposes.
So now, is it at SHPO, the state historical?
Based on the information I received on Wednesday of last week, my understanding is it has not been formally presented to SHPO yet.
Okay.
Is it just these 17 businesses and it's listed here?
Correct, yes.
These are the only ones that are.
Correct. You have a question?
Steve, sorry.
Just a question, I know we're talking about this, I am not involved now with the facade program because I have a personal issue with the Franks Design Group. Why aren't we on schedule? You know, we're going clear back to July, that some of these businesses haven't seen anything. We're not at SHPO, we were supposed to be at SHPO before the first of the year. We were supposed to have bids out here in 3 days, or in 3 weeks. Are we even going to meet? Are we even going to start construction this year? You know, I guess that's a concern. You know, we have the all-school reunion here come Chautauqua Days time in July, and as a business person downtown, we need to start making some plans to get people in our back door if this is going to happen. And I don't know if has the commission or the committee met to put a fire under somebody's rear?
I received this information at the same time that the chairman of the committee received it last Wednesday.
So is there an answer to Steve's question? I mean, why aren't we on time? We don't know.
All I know is at this point, I asked for the reports. I received the reports last week.
Are we? Are we current with Mr. Franks?
Financially?
Financially?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Is he making bills every month?
yes, he has been.
Okay.
Although
So
we
is
don't
it
have one this
basically-
month, but he didn't submit it.
Is it
Correct.
basically him holding it up then?
In my opinion, yes.
And he hasn't, you know, we expected to be at letting bids out by end of December, first part of January, and it's my impression, kind of based on this, is that he's just not fully meeting his,
This brings back issues that have been discussed since last October. I don't think anything's changed in our relationship with Mr. Frank since last October. I can only tell you the information I have as of right now. We have received the final documentation. I recommended that we present it to the business owners. That information was desired by December 1st. I received it last Wednesday.
Has Region 12 gone along with this idea that Mr. Franks has?
What do you mean, Steve?
That bids can go out with conjunction of SHPO approval?
I have not heard from Fred on that issue yet.
Any other discussion on that?
I just have, so we're a month and a half behind the timeline he gave us.
I don't know that I can necessarily say that, Bobby.
He said,
Yes, as far as getting us the final reports, he is a month behind in providing those to us. Has it impacted our bid date? According to the information he shared with us on Wednesday, my understanding is he does not believe that is going to affect our bid date.
you know, and I think we should probably, you know, visit with is it Fred Keston?
Mhm.
With Region 12, who's coordinating this in conjunction with the Franks group, and I think we should probably visit with him, you know, and just indicate to him the council is, you know, interested in seeing this move along, you know, not just you as the administrator, but the council in general. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say contact him. Adam, please.
As well as the businesses too.
Well, as I said, I'm anticipating
Sure.
having meetings, a lot of meetings on Friday towards this. I have already heard back from one business owner so far that will not be able to meet on Friday, but they intend to meet with me sometime next week.
Adam, is he meeting with the chairman of the council, of the board, when he's here, if he's gonna meet with us?
He is not going to be here.
He's not
I am
meeting.
meeting
You're
with
just
the
gonna-
business owners, yes.
So will we be doing the easement at that time too?
I have actually already submitted copies of the language for the easements to the business owners. That was sent out in the email this morning as well. So they now have a generic copy of the information. Remember, the easements are not recorded till after the bid process when they actually are signing the documentation for an agreement. But I wanted them to have the language for the easement in their hands so that if they had any conflict with that they could communicate that back to us within the next few weeks, with the anticipation that we are still on our time schedule.
Any more discussion? Any more questions? Okay, on to 6 miscellaneous. A, MG Electric to address the council. Matt, take it away.
In front of you guys have a sheet. Basically is the payback on upgrading this city office right here, the gas department, with LEDs. The only thing is not included in here, or there's 2 things not included in here, the exit lights, which I haven't figured in yet. It can probably be figured in, and to be honest with you, it does make sense because it's a really good incentive on it. I'll have to figure it in. And then the T5 high bays in the shop. They currently do not have a rebate for those when switching from T5, what they are right now, to LED. If you're switching to an incandescent bulb, you'd be able to get a rebate. But being the way it is right now, when you guys updated it a year or 2 ago, there's no rebate for that. I can get you an LED fixture and let you know the cost of that, but I personally don't think it makes sense to change those out, being that you just changed them out a year or 2 ago. Anyway, I'll go through it with you. Right now, the system watts for is 9,600, and it's taken down to 2,977. Annual kilowatt hours are 24,960, 7739. The total cost of the project is 11,288. Then there's a rebate for all the fixtures that we'd send all in, and the rebate check you're going to get is $6,877, which brings the final cost to $4,400. And there's payoff doing this LED project of 3.42 years. And the way I figured that in was figured 50 hours a week for 52 weeks at 7.5 cents a kilowatt. I wasn't 100% sure on that kilowatt rate, but pretty close, I think. We can adjust it accordingly. But I guess that's basically it. It cost how much you'll save per year. You'll save $1,292 a year in energy savings, and the monthly cost is around $108. So basically, month by month, you would not wait to do this. You're going to spend $108 more on this system as opposed to the new system for power. If you're interested, I can show you a couple, or some of the new lights that we'll put in, or an option, or two different options. They're both the same price. This one right here is called the Evo Kit. You basically take off the guts out of this one and install this one. That's what it looks like. This is a 3-lamp configuration. These are 4 lamps, so we'll be brighter. I just got a 3-lamp because I didn't want to blind a bunch of people. This right behind you is a brand new configuration where you tear out the whole fixture and put this in. It looks identical to what you have. I personally like the look of that one better. It looks more modern myself, and I'm gonna charge, it's the same cost either way. They give you a $125 rebate for this, and they give you a $100 rebate for that. However, it takes more labor to change that out to that, so I'm charging the same cost. It's your choice on what you want to do. And then if you also want to switch from a 4-lamp configuration down to a 3-lamp, I don't have it figured in the calculation, but obviously it would be cheaper running a 3-lamp configuration as opposed to a 4-lamp. I think a 3-lamp will do just fine, but if you want to stick with a 4-lamp, it's no big deal. Then the incandescent bulbs, I figured in like around in the bathrooms and just a couple odd fixtures. These are just 60-watt replacement, and they match this color really close.
Electrician in the house.
That looks stupid. I must have broke mine. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Switch problem. That's what that looks like. It matches that pretty comparably. Then they also have a warmer option for, you might want that in the bathroom. It matches more of your household lamp colors. That's a 2700K, which is, that matches more of a warmer color as what you'd see like in a home. The one light that was kind of blinding you when I turned on, that is an LED option if you did want to change that out in the shop. I can get you a price on that. I've yet to get that though. But, I guess that's all I have.
So your numbers do not include the shop area then?
Do not include the shop area because they didn't have a rebate for that at all. I would guess it'd be around the $300 per fixture is what it would take, and there's 15 fixtures, so around $4,500 it would take to do that. And I do not have that figured in the calculation. I can add that and figure that in the calculation if you want. I think it's going to increase the payback a little bit because there is no rebate for it, and the high bays are so much money right now.
Sure.
They have yet to drop in price.
And I know we did quite a update in that area.
Yeah, you did. And I noticed that the workers out there, they don't turn on all the lights all the time. They just turn on usually one row at a time, and as needed, they turn them on.
Yeah.
But have any questions.
So are those available both in a warm white and a cool white?
I can get 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000. These are, I believe, these are 4,000, and these are 5,000, I believe. So, and then they make a 3,000 too, which is more of a warm white. You can get whatever color, they're all the same price. And I can change the wattages on these to go from dimmer to brighter. They're all the same price either way. And as for that one too, the same. Just figured out a price for this business, but I'd be interested in doing every city business in town.
So you're talking 50 hours a week
50 hours a week.
of usage typically?
Typically, I can't say that 100% of it's used 50 hours a week.
I guess like this room with 12 fixtures in it probably.
Is not, but you also I also figured, one thing I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I figured out 2 outside wall packs in this too. And those are on longer than the 50 hours a week
Okay.
themselves. And they would actually probably be a little bit brighter than what you have right now. But they draw about a third of what they do. If you care to look and see what one's like. I didn't make a bunch of copies, but I have a picture of one right here.
Are you talking front door lamps?
I was actually talking the back.
On
The
the back.
front door, I'm actually just going to use the existing fixture and install one of those incandescent lights in there because it is incandescent. If it was a metal halide light or whatever, I'd switch it out to an LED. But you can change that by just putting in a bulb. If you want me to figure it out that way, I can do that too.
Would it make sense to be looking at the wastewater treatment plant and the
I
water
I,
and the water?
I guarantee it would, yeah.
And the water plant as well?
I would not charge you to look at that either. Spend my time and do it.
Should we have him look at those then?
Yeah, we had.
So this right here, Matt, is just for this room and the offices?
This is, and also down below.
Oh, so this
What
is for
added
down
up quite a
below?
bit to this, it
Just
actually I
not
think
the-
be a little
the
bit
garage
faster,
area.
was
Okay.
changing
Not the
out down below the, I don't know, what do you call it, the break room?
The
Okay,
break, the
okay.
gas room.
Break
yeah.
room, and then underneath
Okay.
it, there's a shop, and you guys changed out some T12 fixtures to T8s. I'm gonna take off the T8 bulbs and put in LED lamps. And the LED lamps draw 12 watts, and the old ones draw 32. So it's roughly a little bit more than a third of what the old ones would. And all it is changing out the bulb in that part of it.
I'd say there'd be quite a bit of savings at the library too for this.
Yeah.
Library, I think,
Probably,
would be
yeah.
a smart idea too. But I'm sure that operates quite a few hours. I don't know, yeah, the water plant, sewer plant make sense, or is that in city?
Oh,
Water and sewer.
I mean, your operating hours would be the same. I'd have to talk to both department heads about,
Okay.
just like downstairs, they may not light up all the areas all the time. I don't know that you're going to, other than like the,
I know the break room is. and-
well, I'm thinking at the other 2 facilities, possibly the office area, which is the lab area at the sewer plant. I don't know that the rest of the plant has lights on enough that would probably justify it. Water plant, I'd have to talk to
One
Jen
minimum
about.
requirement, I think they want, for the most part, they want your operating hours to be a minimum of 1,000 hours to give you the rebate. And you gotta be a commercial business on Mid-America. I forgot to mention that, I'm sorry. Is there anything else
That
you
sounds
need?
like some really good ideas. Now, this is something we would have to put out for a bid process, is that right?
That would be up to you. I mean, if you did all the facilities at one time, yeah, it would meet the necessary requirements.
I'm not taking.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, I'm just asking more information questions. I mean, that would be,
It makes sense to do so, but it is not necessary, no. If you're asking me from a legal standpoint, no,
Okay.
it's not required.
I personally would like to see, if we could follow, I think the library would make infinite amount of sense if we could, because of the hours of usage and the number of fixtures there. And if we could do something in the sewer plant and the water plant, if that were deemed necessary, but I would love to see numbers for that. Is that something that we would need to add to a CIP as we were moving forward?
I'll be happy to continue to work with him
Okay.
on
Um,
putting.
What's the maximum bid for the
Do
amount.
you
that-
want this bid as a whole for the whole all city offices, or did you want this individualized, or how did you want this done? Because if you were to get a bid for
I would say we
several
would-
different things, I might beat someone on something.
I would
someone
say,
else will beat me
my
on
personal
something.
preference, I would probably want us to bid the whole thing as one package.
That's one package,
Okay.
yeah.
Library would have to be separate.
Yeah, because they're under their own autonomy, so they would have to be separate. That's true.
But as far as the water plant, sewer plant,
They can all be under us.
they can all be under us.
Streetlights, LED,
No, they are currently not.
something you might want to consider in the future.
Yeah. Really, the only thing that's kept us from moving in that direction as of this point is the upfront cost on that. It's quite considerable.
I think that is a smart idea.
Yeah, it's good savings.
You mean with,
Does
with
Mid-America maintain those for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
you know, not only would it be a savings, but like the city of Perry at the Iowa League of Cities did a presentation on some of the projects that they had done, and one of them was lighting and the savings that they had made, and it was quite considerable. But in addition to that, the light pollution, you know, the amount of light going up versus the light going down, you know, was also a considerable, or a consideration there.
With those tubes that I'm putting in down in the basement, they're one-sided. They actually shine light just down.
Okay.
They don't shine light. They shine light just down where they're supposed to.
You know, and I don't think that this is the proper time for a discussion of the street lighting, but, you know, perhaps that is one thing that we might start looking at in the future, and maybe even visit with the city of Perry on how they finance that, and it actually paid for itself with grants and so on over a period of time, and I have the contact information on that.
Pocahontas is done as well.
Thank you for your time and
Thanks,
preparing
Matt.
this.
Is there a way to take my paperwork and pick this up?
Yes.
tomorrow? Thank you.
Or you can just leave them here and we can install them.
Someone will take them home and put them to use, I'm sure, tonight. Okay, on to B, miscellaneous. Discussion on the Freedom Rock, Adam.
Included in your packet tonight, you will see within the memo, and also you'll see a separate documentation. Since our last discussion on this item, pursuant to the council's request, I did ask the officers to be here to talk with you about some questions that you had had at the last meeting. I also did receive a communication from the Sorensens, the artist that actually did the work for the rock. And provided in your packet is a copy of the agreement that was arranged with the Sorensen, with the artist. And it does bring up a strong question about somewhat ownership of the rock, because what it suggests in here is that the responsibility for maintaining the rock is that of Chamber Main Street. They are the body that has signed off on the actual maintenance of the rock. Now, the agreement is pretty clear. It's specifically for the rock, not for the flagpoles, the building, anything of that nature. You're basically, the agreement pertains purely to the rock itself. But it says any change in responsibility or ownership. I hate to use the word ownership because it doesn't necessarily say ownership. But as far as any change in the relationship that is required by the contract itself, would require the approval of both parties to the agreement, which is Chamber Main Street and Sorensen Studios. So she made that quite clear to me when she communicated with me, and of course I said I would make sure that Chamber was aware of what contractual arrangement they had through the agreement, and make sure that the City Council was aware as they were reviewing this what that information was.
So our basic discussion is.
What do you want to do?
I you were gonna say.
I asked the officers here purely because at the last meeting you guys had some questions you specifically wanted to ask. You had asked about an outstanding bill that existed. You had asked about, in fact, I think I referenced that in the email I sent to you guys. It was, I believe there was an MG bill that had come up. about whether or not it had been settled or not, or if there was going to be plans to settle that bill in the process. And of course, at least that was the questions I heard from the council. That was the main concern that they had, was the status of the MG bill. Do you know what the current status of that bill is?
It's all been paid.
We took out our personal loan to pay that bill.
Okay. Do you know when that was taken care of? Because I know I just
Why is that?
talked to MG last week, and they said they had not been paid as of last week.
Well,
So I'm just,
I guess my question is, have you guys approached the county about it?
Okay, very briefly, talked to council about what, the legal counsel about what the options would be. And one of the options was to do a quitclaim deed with either the city or the county, because we were looking for a body that was both nonprofit and had an IRS tax exempt letter on file. It's really for tax purposes for us and tax purposes for donors and the rest of that. And so approached Adam before Christmas to see what the possibilities might be. And then there was a work session scheduled on a Monday morning where it was discussed. There was some conversation about, well, if we would quick claim deed the property over to the city, then the city becomes, sole decision maker in regards to all of this. And one of the options was to move the rock and sell the property. And just letting the council know that really isn't, that never was our intention.
so what about the county? That's what she asked.
Okay. We approached the county originally when we were looking for a place to put it. When the rock was originally started, we approached the city, we approached the county. They were not interested in having it, were concerned about maintenance and some other things. And so Denise and I personally purchased the property from Bill Nolan and said that you could place the Freedom Rock on that property.
But that's the only contact that you guys have had with, you haven't
Well,
asked?
we were turned down by both the city and the county, so no, we haven't gone back.
It's a great project. I think it's a wonderful addition to the city. If we were to accept it, I mean, are there additional donations that have been made? I mean, someone had said that there were more flagpoles donated or something.
They're
And
here.
They're here.
not installed.
But the expectation is from those people who have already donated and for people that have made donations that haven't been installed is, their expectation is that the Freedom Rock is as it was originally proposed. And so the idea of moving the rock or selling the property and the rest of that really, we're really not interested in that. We were interested in, or what we were proposed, was something similar to the arrangement that John Christ has with the gazebo, that the city takes the property, you start looking at the costs, and there is property tax, there is minimal utilities, water and electricity, there is liability insurance, and there is maintenance. And we really addressed each of those things in our conversation about how that could work if the city was interested in doing it.
Since a lot of those conversations were secondhand, could you go over those quickly?
With what? What do you mean they were second?
Okay, since this is the first time that at least I have heard these directly from you, I mean, to avoid the telephone game, I mean, you're talking about the maintenance, the electric, I mean, if we could just...
Okay,
Well,
the property tax is $168 every 6 months.
Is that current?
And everything is current.
No, we haven't paid this.
No, okay. There is water hooked up, but it's turned off. There's electricity hooked up, but it's turned off. And so the utilities on the building are absolutely minimal. The other expense is liability insurance. We currently have it covered personally because it's our property. The city would have the same blanket coverage, and so that really, I don't really see it, you know, a big cost in that than, say, the Chris property or any city park or any other kind of public domain. And then the last piece is maintenance, and we actually have a group of people who have said that the maintenance includes snow blowing, shoveling the walk in the winter, and mowing the lawn in the summer. And I currently do that now and would continue to do that as long as, you know, as long as I'm around or able to do that. You know, there are some other people that are involved that said they would continue to do that too, which the attempt is to not make this a burden on the city at all. And so, as I see, the loss to the city would be the property tax. Everything else is pretty well taken care of.
The concern that we have is that at present, we have put a significant amount of money into the property and the building. The intent of the building was to become an information center that would promote all of the county. Because if you, as you drive in, which I just did, it says Sac County, Freedom Rock. And so it would have information from Blackhawk, it would have information from any of the communities in Sac County to increase awareness of what is available in Sac County as far as tourism. Secondly, there would be an opportunity for, as in many of the other locations, there would be opportunities for sales of the t-shirts or caps, which would generate revenue that would cover the taxes, that would cover the utilities, that would actually go to revenue lost taxes, local option sales tax. So the building itself was intended to generate enough money to pay for maintenance, whatever, utility bills, which are $7.16 at current, I think, and the taxes. So our thought was that if there was a foundation, just like the library foundation or board, whatever you want to call it, that was a governing body that dealt with this, that, you know, monies could be paid to the city. You have to pay a certain amount to the Sorensens because he has ownership of that mural. That is his. So if we use any of those, for instance, all the postcards that were printed, which we paid for and everything, that the intent was for those to be down there, a welcome center where people could sign in and whatever. But I mean, we can only address what it has done for our business because we hear people that have been there and they come up and eat a sandwich. So it currently, even without the welcome center, is generating revenue for Sac City. And Ross said earlier, and it is very much, if the conversation with the city includes moving the rock to any place, we respectfully will not have any further conversation.
Well, I personally don't want to see that done. I like the rock where it's at. I think it's in a perfect place. It's in the center of town. It's by the Monument Square. It's by the courthouse. But my concern is it's a county thing. I mean, that's why I asked if you guys had approached the county.
Earlier, yes, Teresa, but not recently.
Because I really truly think that they would probably be the better choice to purchase the property if that's the case, but.
See, it's not purchase, we're talking about deeding it over for
Right.
free.
Well, yeah, but they would have to do the maintenance to it or whatever.
Well, if you would like, that is certainly a possibility, and we can do that. Particularly, I mean, the article in the newspaper was very specific that if the city gets it, you want no strings attached. And if we were to, have a partnership with the city, it would be with the codicil that you will not move that rock.
'Cause
And
we've
so
got-
that's a string.
We've got pledges and promises to people that have already been.
Well, I don't
involved in
think
this
it's
thing.
fair to the people that have already purchased flagpoles and put that money there, and I know that there probably are some people on this council that do think that if we purchase it, that we need to sell it, and I don't agree with that. I would not go for that.
It sat vacant for 10 years before we brought it
Right.
back into the community. And it isn't about, this has been our expense, but from the very beginning, then it all of a sudden became our project. And it's not the absolute freedom rock. It never was intended to be connected to us in any way, shape, or form. It was always meant for the city, for the veterans, and for the county. But it has become, truly, it's become a financial burden to us because we are funding.
We're underwriting the things that have gone on. So, I mean, we did the roof, we did the doors, we did the windows,
We
we
did
did
the
the clean
siding.
out.
We put the barn siding on the back wall, we enclosed the doors. It's been,
And what, getting it wired and plumbed, you know, what, there was some expense incurred in that, and actually, we don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean, we did it because we wanted to.
well, we thought, at the time when we started the electricity, we thought there was to be a donation to pay for that. And then we felt it was very unjust for Matt to be sitting there with a almost $4,000 bill not being paid. And like I said, we took out a personal loan to make sure that that got done because it wasn't fair to him. But if, as I said, respectfully, we talk about moving it and conversation, we'll just keep it. And
At this
move
point,
on.
everything's been paid for, and we're down to those minimal, we've got a little bit of taxes, we got a little bit of utilities, and we've got insurance covered, and we take care of the maintenance. So at this
So
point,
nothing would really change.
it's not,
Discussion, council? Let's hear from some of you guys. I said my piece.
I had a question. You show on here that you purchased it for $1,500. I don't remember that. I remember them asking $500 from you, but nothing in money. But the $500 was to be given to the school
He
for
never did
basketball.
that.
Who didn't do that?
Bill.
Bill,
Bill
he
Nolan.
never gave the money back. as
Oh, so
far-
he did get the $500.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, because the school has never been
No.
seen the
Right.
money.
So he said he would do that and then he
Yeah.
never did.
He reneged on that, and so that did not happen, and I'm.
No.
I mean,
I was just questioning it.
No, that's okay, it just didn't happen, and,
But we don't have any control over
No,
it.
you don't.
yeah, and
No,
we
you
just
don't.
very casually mentioned that, and there was no response, so.
I'm not afraid.
But if you're asking about documentation, I have a ledger of every hour that was donated, every dollar that was donated, how it was spent, how bills were paid. I mean, if this would go to a foundation, there would be documentation of absolutely everything that has been spent and who has given hours to that project, lots of hours, mostly Ross.
Tom, you look like you want to
Well,
say
yeah,
something.
basically, I've kind of taken an unofficial survey with a lot of people in town, and I'm saying it's probably 60-40 as far as the city not taking it and the city taking it. But on the other hand, I agree with Teresa. I don't think it should be moved. I think it's in the appropriate place with the Monument Park and Memorial. I think it should be there. I think I'm really drawn or torn on which way to go on the thing, but I just want you to know that I can see both sides of it, and I'm not exactly sure how this should be handled out. I think the county, being that it's a county rock, should be the one that's actually in charge of it.
Okay, may
If-
I ask?
And if to ask again, and if this is not possible, then maybe we can go to a plan B, but that's my personal opinion on the situation.
When you have had this survey unofficially,
Yeah.
what is the concern that is expressed if the city takes it?
unfortunately, a lot of people doesn't really think that the city should be taking more property. They don't believe that we should have any more parks. We have enough maintenance in our parks and around through the swimming pool, the tennis courts, and what have you. And they essentially feel that, you know, it shouldn't be a city problem as far as taking care of it, maintenance, which really, honestly, as you said, the maintenance is going to be minimal, but it's a case of where, you know, you have to ask, and that's the answers I've received.
One question I have, I know that if the city owns it and people donate to it, it's not tax deductible. Am I correct on that, Adam?
That is true, yes.
Or, I mean, or you're donating it to the city is not, I mean, you could do it as a write-off perhaps, but donating to either a city or a county, is not it's not, we are not a foundation that you can write off donations to.
It's one of the reasons why the Friends of the Library and entities like that exist, is they were established so that people could donate to those type of activities and have the...
So if we were to take it as a city, could we put aside a separate
the city
foundation?
Can't create a foundation. The city can assist a private individuals in creating an organization, but the city cannot create a foundation.
I mean,
But if a foundation was formed, could they take over basically the whole thing?
Kind of a little bit of a clarification, okay, the foundation has been, the Sac City Foundation has been approached on that, and the foundation felt as though this was not in the foundation's purview to, you know, maintain and oversee and take care of the rock. You know, we're more of or the foundation is more of a flow-through organization for funneling and approving, let's say, amounts of money to different organizations and so on, and as opposed to actually taking care of something like that. So, you know, it could be a flow-through for somebody else that wants to maintain it and take care of it, possibly.
I mean, like the library has a foundation, or art museums have a foundation, or the Freedom Rock could have a foundation too. I guess my only concern is I wouldn't want us to accept it with the illusion that people donating to it because it was a city property were going to have a tax write-off. I mean, that would be, I mean, that could be a publicity nightmare. I mean, I certainly appreciate everything you've done, and I think I would love to I think we need to find a way to make it viable to go on, so that it's not just the Opsal Freedom Rock, or it's not just the Chamber Freedom Rock. How does, I guess, reading the contract, the Chamber would have to approve any change of ownership for this. What is the Chamber's feeling?
We haven't really had a discussion with the chamber. I can only tell you that that contract really is intended about clear coating and maintaining the paint on the rock. That really was the intention of that contract, to ensure that all the $5,000 work that was done to that rock, it requires that it be clear coated again and again to maintain that. And so the main reason in the contract is that the rock doesn't disintegrate. The paint doesn't disintegrate.
Well, the contract, though, is, I mean, it's pretty clear.
It talks about maintenance, and the maintenance is...
No, the contract also says, though, that the chamber is licensed to display it.
Right, display it, but we don't own it.
Right. Now, I'm not saying you do, but and any changes in that ownership would have to be approved by Mr. Sorensen, or the Sorensen Studios, and Chamber, and obviously...
It's not ownership. The chamber does not own it.
But
is that
in
right?
the maintenance, I mean, it would have to, we'd have to agree that someone's gonna maintain it.
the chamber has the right to display the rock, and it's currently being displayed on the Opsal's property. Would the chamber have a problem if it were displayed on the city's property or the county property? I guess it's not, because as I read the contract, any changes of...
A problem, are you talking about it remaining in the place that it is
I'm
and
talking
being
about-
displayed on a property
I'm
that's owned
talking
by the
about,
city or county?
is there an impediment of the as I read the contract, the council and Mr. Sorensen would have to agree to any change of who was responsible for it.
For it.
And And that, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is where is the chamber in this?
The chamber took the project on originally in the design committee, and that's how it all started. Denise was in charge of the design committee at the time that all of this started. And that's really where the Freedom Rock idea was born, was in the chamber design committee. The chamber supported the Freedom Rock the entire time that we worked on that project. So I wouldn't think that there would be any change in that. We support that the rock remain where it is, and that, so that it's not damaged. There was a lot of people that donated money, time, transporting the rock itself, the other things that have been donated, along with the huge amount of money that the officers have put into it. So we definitely have supported the Freedom Rock in its current place all along, and would continue to support that. I think I could say that easily.
No matter who they turned it over to, you guys will
Correct.
continue to support.
Because I mean, if you try moving it,
Oh, I
you're
know.
gonna
I know.
damage it in some way. I mean, I don't see how you are.
Well, and people are pretty passionate about that stuff. If you've had somebody in the military
Yeah.
and you start messing with that stuff,
Yeah, I'm one right here.
I know, my
I
husband is
could
too, and I'm
stand up
very
and
passionate
Go
about
into
it.
great detail.
Yep.
About, I'm one of the people with the flagpoles waiting to go up on the property.
Yep.
And I'm not getting a tax deduction for that. I don't care about
Yep.
that. It was never intended to be a deduction. It was intended to be something added to the community. There are a lot of veterans that live here. People are, probably the most passionate people that you'll get are veterans. If you start messing with the Freedom Rock, I can guarantee that, my survey would be, it's gonna be a problem.
I guess the biggest thing too, that the understanding of that contract is in regards to the, what do you want to call it? His cut of the profit, his 10% of, like you said, Bruce, displaying the postcards, if we did a T-shirt or anything like that. His royalty, I think, is a big concern that's in that contract also. And I think that was in between the chamber and, well,
But none of that even has to happen. I mean, you could literally close the door on the building, lock the door, and leave it that way. I mean, you don't have to put, it doesn't have to be that. We don't have to sell things out of there. We don't have to do any of that. I mean, literally, we're talking about $168 every 6 months and $7.16 if we keep the building closed.
Well, I truly don't think it's gonna be a financial deficit to
I
the
don't
city
think
if
that
we
that's
were
a
to take it.
huge issue.
I think the concern with some of these people on the city council, I haven't heard from a couple of them, but is that they wanna turn it over and sell it make it retail property again.
I just think that's ridiculous.
So-
But nobody did anything with it for 10 years, why would somebody do it now, when all this money's been donated to the building and all of that? I just don't see the reason to move the rock. I just don't see the reason.
So where do we go from here?
That's up to the council. If they want to, I mean, the council has to take some kind of, they can either
So our-
choose not to or to take some kind of action.
Our action tonight would either be to vote to,
Move forward
Move
with
forward
making
with-
an arrangement with accepting the rock or something lesser of that.
really you're accepting the property.
Correct. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. That's a more accurate statement.
so if we were to accept the property, what's the feelings on the council on leaving everything as is?
I think, we have talked about, approaching the county again. I think that option, should be.
Would you guys be willing to approach the county and see if they would be willing to take it back, and if they want, or to take it and make it a county, since it's Sac County Freedom Rock? And then if not, we can go to Plan B and we'll have to discuss it again between us.
Sure. One of our other thoughts was in other counties, the American Legion or the VFW have been the primary entity with their rocks. And we've not gotten anywhere with either of those.
But they have been approached.
Well, if you guys.
What was their feelings on it? I'm just curious what their feelings on it were.
Just not.
I think in some ways, yes, it is a county Freedom Rock. In other ways, I hate to see us just punt. Because, I mean, I guess I would rather see us, I don't know, but we could play this game where it ping pongs back and forth. Well, we wanted to go to the county, and the county says, well, have you talked to the city? You know, and it's an asset to the community, and
Without a doubt.
and at some point, the Opsals no longer want to own the property, and it's not really something that probably you want to have Sac Realty and Greens put a for sale sign on the property and say, here's a rock, by the way, you can't do anything with this property. Informal conversations with the supervisors that I've had with a couple of them kind of indicate there wasn't a great interest in them doing it. Now, I don't know that it's come to them in an open meeting. I mean, that,
Do the rocks have to be a county project? Because this is the county rock.
No,
How
it's,
can,
it's
how
just,
can you use the county as part of a name of an object that the county doesn't own?
well,
I mean, I'm just asking.
we're Sac County, and they
The
placed it
the
in Sac
artist,
City
the
because we're
artist
the.
chooses to do one per county on a first come, first served basis. And so when we heard that,
County seat,
we thought that Sac City would be, since it's the county seat, it would be a good location for that.
Agreed.
And so, I don't think Bubba will do another rock in Sac County at this time. I mean, this is the Sac County rock, it just happens to be in Sac City and it happens to reside on our property. But we've got we're like trustees of it because, I mean, we bought it, we donated it, we wanted it to happen, but we're also gonna be a little cautious, that's why we kinda came tonight and said, we're gonna be cautious. If you are indicating that you wanna sell the property, we're not gonna offer it to you. Now,
I have something to offer with that. It had a lot to do with the Freedom Rock project. And the way Bubba had things set up was he's gonna paint one rock every one of the counties, the 99 counties, and it's the County Freedom Rock Tour. He did say that in the future, after they get all 99 done, which is gonna take years to do, that if there was interest, they might start considering going around and doing another. However, what I do know is that Hallett's is not gonna donate another one of those rocks in the county, and people are not driving to Lakeview to see the Freedom Rock coming into Sac City. And that's why the chamber jumped on board, because they wanted to make sure that people were coming in for tourism to our community, and our community was getting the dollars for that. So it'd be silly almost to give it to the county. That's just my opinion.
You have a question?
Steve, go ahead.
I got one thing, and maybe this is the wrong thing, and I'll probably be quoted wrong in the newspaper.
Hey, Dale? No, pay attention.
Get it right, Dale.
Can we make a decision on something? In sitting in one of these chairs for the last 5 years, I think there's been 2 decisions made. 2. That I can remember that was really worthwhile. We bought a Bobcat, and we bought a blue tractor after 2 years of talking about it. Those projects were $20, $30, $40, $100,000 projects. And we've gone on now, going on the 3rd month, for $324.
If it's a city property, the taxes are, we don't pay taxes on it, right?
That is correct, yes.
Exempt.
So it would become a tax exempt property. So I mean, that,
So then it's $7.16 a month.
I stand by my recommendation to the council. I truly, honestly believe we don't need more property to maintain. We need less property to maintain. In the 7 years I've been doing this job, we've sold off every piece of property we do not need to own because we are struggling to maintain the level of our maintenance we have now. By taking on more properties, and to all due respect to someone who's willing to maintain it today, someday in the future, the maintenance of this is going to fall into the hands of the city.
How much maintenance do you truly think that property's gonna take?
You're going to
out?
have mowing, you're going to have
There's not that
snow
much to mow.
removal. It is another piece of property that you're going to maintain. And I truly, honestly believe it is not in the best interest of the city to take on another piece of property. I've said that in any case where we've dealt with pieces of
I
property.
think this is a little bit different project than anything else that we've probably had to deal with too.
Those other
You're dealing
properties
with
did have a
people's,
memorial.
you're dealing with people's histories, with people's lives, with people's feelings and emotions.
And I completely agree, but I'm not looking at it from the perspective of
I
what the
understand
property
that,
is. I'm
but
looking
I-
at it from the perspective of the city taking the property. And I look at it from the perspective, you have an unfinished structure there that's going to take money. You're either going to have to tear down that structure or you need to do something long-term with that structure. For us to say that there's no cost with that structure, we're ignoring the fact that structure exists. At some point in the future, that structure can no longer be ignored. You're either going to have to tear it down, you're either going to have to improve it, or you're going to have to do something to maintain the structure on the building. We are naive if we do not think that there is a cost associated with that, and we have to have a plan for that as well.
And there will be probably a cost associated with it, but we are the city. We are the ones that want and should want to see this town better itself.
But
And I really truly don't think there's gonna be that much expense to either
I think
tearing
Ross
it
and I
down
are
or
done
fixing it up.
with working with the city on this, honestly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna see miscellaneous.
Included in your memo to the council, there's quite a description here that basically tries to outlay the idea of a plan that has been developed. We, along with the rock discussion, had this same discussion, I believe, on December 22nd, where we discussed the ins and outs of a potential arrangement between us and Chamber, where you would have a position created by the city. It would be a economic development director position. That position would then provide services back to the Chamber Main Street, and in response of receiving those services, there would be fees paid by Chamber Main Street in order to pay for that. Part of how that would work is the $12,500 that is currently being handed over by the city to Chamber Main Street for operational purposes on an annual basis. One way that this position would be paid for, whether you do it through handing it to them and repayment back, or if we discontinue providing that funding to them, that funding, of course, would go towards paying for the new position. There's about a page-long information in there about how that scenario would work, and kind of going over some questions and comments about that arrangement. And probably the two most important things for the council to keep in mind is for us to include the benefits for this position in any type of into the budget for next year. This decision has to be made this month. And of course, as I also say in there, Chamber is currently on hold as far as what their future plans are until they can hear some kind of response from us on this issue. So there's a need to be moving forward on this issue one way or the other, so that both Chamber can decide how they're going to proceed forward, and so that we can decide from a budgetary standpoint how we are going to proceed forward for next year's budget.
Discussion?
If we don't make a decision tonight, quite honestly, we have to make a decision at the next council.
Bobby, when you came to our work session, could you go through with what you told us about the proposition that you're putting forward?
We believe that we could get a better qualified candidate if we were able to pay a commensurate salary with benefits. A part-time position, 25 to 30 hours for $20,000 is basically all we can afford, no benefits. It's very difficult to get someone into a position like that. So the idea had been kicked around in previous years, but nothing had ever really been, followed through and really finalized. We were able to find people in the past. We believe that if we could share the position, and we talked about a couple different scenarios at the meeting, and then Adam and I sent some emails that talked about the possibility of either an annual sharing where we divide up the hours. The requirement is that 25 hours of that position has to be Chamber Main Street. It's required for us to remain a Main Street community. We believe that the Main Street community part is important because it provides us training for that person. It provides a network of information that we would no longer have if we weren't in that organization. The CDBG grant that we got was because we're a Chamber Main Street community. So all of those things are important. So it's got to stay Main Street. So 25 hours of that would have to be dedicated, on average, would have to be dedicated to Main Street, Chamber Main Street. We've struggled in the past with the number of hours and with the requirements never get less. They always get more. Nothing's ever given, Main Street continues to add things that we're responsible for. There are 4 required trainings that they have to do every year. We have an accreditation process that we have to go through, which is an 8-page checklist, and we have an annual visit that evaluates whether we meet those requirements. We have met all those requirements in the past. We felt that because of the connection between chamber and an economic development, that those really do go hand in hand, and that it would be a good way for the city to have someone dedicated to time for economic development for Sac City, and it would be, and the connections that that person has through the Chamber Main Street organization would help on the economic side. So we really felt that rather that be we understand it would be a city position, but we also talked about the possibility of the chamber contracting for those 25 hours of services because we have specific requirements for that chamber director. Specific things that they have to do, that they're required to do, which we would want to control, of course, because the board's responsible for making those things happen. And maybe with some kind of a contracting for those services, we would retain the evaluation of those duties and control over those duties. And then that would leave the economic side to the city and the council, with oversight from the council about chamber things anyway, which you all have been involved in continually since we became a Chamber Main Street organization. So we felt we could get a better qualified person, someone that could look at economic marketing, those kinds of things, as well as the Chamber Main Street side. So that's why we started the discussion, and we felt that it could be a win-win situation for both you and the chamber with the 12.5 you guys are already giving us. That's a big portion of the salary that we're paying now. And we talked about, I'm not sure what your paper says, but we talked about from our investment fund, that investment drive that we do in January, we would contribute some more money. We just threw the figure $5,000 or $6,000 around to get the total amount that would come out of the city budget to a minimum. So we want to be able to support it, as well as we know that it's an increase in cost for you. So we are trying to figure a way that it could be beneficial to both and we could all bear the cost.
Guess my question would be, other than adding a city employee, what would be the benefit to actually the city for the remaining hours that isn't involved in the chamber?
And how many remaining hours do you truly think
Right.
that person would be able to give?
We talked about that. The majority of the time, and there are different scenarios. It could be 25 hours in our office, 15 hours in the office down here a week, if that's what you wanted. It could be, I know that what happens in the chamber is that we're busier from May through September, October, when our events are really going. That's the time when there are a lot of hours required by contacting volunteers, all of those kinds of things. So we have more hour requirements truly in the summer time than we do in the other ones. So we thought that the share in hours would eventually even out. with a 25 for us, 15 for you.
How do you think the investment drive is gonna work if they know that the city has a hand in the chamber director? Do you think people are gonna give as much as they give if they know the city's a part of the directors to Chamber Main Street?
I wouldn't think that that would be an issue, but maybe it is.
Well, I don't know, the city has some enemies out there, you know? Just saying. I have a feeling it could affect your investment drive. I really think it could.
And, go ahead.
I guess that's one of my big fears, not so much for us, as something I think you guys really need to consider.
Uh-huh.
Are you willing to double your investment in this?
Me?
No, well, you personally or the city.
I'll give you what I've given you every year, but I'm not gonna double
But I
it.
mean, you know, can we up our request to 25 grand?
Your request can be whatever you want to.
Yeah, you can give us whatever you want for a request. I'm just thinking personal people, other business people, you know, that do invest regularly in Chamber Main Street.
I guess our consensus is we don't want to lose the Main Street end of it.
Right.
And it's getting down to the point where it's going to be gone if we can't find a director. And you're not going to find a director for $18,000.
Can I
That was
offer
our story.
some advice? I mean, just because I don't work for them anymore, and I know all of you, and I love all of them to death, but I never would have left if I was making a salary that I could afford to still, you know, feed my family on. I absolutely love it here. This is my hometown. But now that I've had the opportunity to work for 6 weeks in another community where their chamber director is a city employee with shared hours, shared office space, I can tell you it does work. And I can also tell you all the things that Sac City is missing out on because they don't have an economic development director working for their community. And there's nobody that's sitting in this office that has time in their schedule to add any more duties to their own jobs.
What do you do differently at your job now, since it's shared, than you did with this one? For the city?
For the city?
Yes.
Well, Pocahontas has revolving loan funds, which is bringing business into the community, and that's not happening here. Businesses are closing their doors and they're moving away. For what reason, I can't tell you. I just can tell you that somebody needs to be focusing on pulling people into the community and business and industry, and finding ways to.
So is that part of your job now? Is that what
That's
you
my
do up
job
there?
now.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
I'm spending a majority of my time doing that compared to chamber activities, but that's because the chambers force their volunteers to step up more there and take more responsibility, which, I mean, our volunteers do a lot now for the chamber, but that's also because they're Main Street. And in a lot of communities that are Main Street communities in the state, those Main Streets are just Main Street working for their city. So it's kind of a trade-off. Right now you have the chamber that's pretty much funding the Main Street program with help from the city, of course, but just a small portion.
Okay, I'm not real clear on what your status there is in Pocahontas. Okay, now you're an employee of the city. Can you describe?
I'm a city employee. I
And
am hired as 20% chamber and 80% city. But they understand that whatever's going on at the time, you know, that takes a percentage of your hours. So, I mean, right now, their chamber's going through their investment drive. So I'm doing more stuff for the chamber than I am for the city, but yet I'm keeping all the responsibilities I'm expected of for the city as well.
so in other words, 20% of your funding comes from the chamber, the other 80% is from the city.
Chamber reimburses the city a percentage, or however they have it figured, a quarter. And since they're public, I can safely say that it's $2,500 a quarter that their chamber's paying to the city. And they still get memberships. And people still value the chamber, just as they do here. Their memberships there are a little lower, but that's just because they haven't asked for more money, and they're not much lower.
So are there dues collections, you know, if people, let's say, relinquished their responsibility in the chamber towards, you know, of giving, you know, their chamber dues and so on, is that decreased at all as a result of the city having the position? In other words, one of my fears is Okay, now the city takes ownership that, you know, the support by the chamber members is gonna, you know, significantly decrease. Now the city has inherited another position, you know, which we have to, you
They
know.
have 400 people less than we do, and they have more chamber members than we do. And I think that's just because of all the work that's going directly into the city from the other part of the position.
Are they on Chamber Main Street?
They're not a Main Street.
Okay. Just curious.
But I can also see what they're losing because they're not a Main Street.
So what are their numbers? Okay, they have
400 people less than we do here in Sarah.
population, okay.
Population, and they have more chamber members.
Are they supporting, are the respective chamber members supporting, in, let's say, equivalent amounts to what we have here as far as dues, or?
Similar. They're just a little less, but it's just how they have their drive set up.
Okay.
If my math is correct, we're talking about, if we're doing 25 hours a week for the chamber, that's $1,300 a year roughly for the chamber and 780 hours a year for the city. If we're talking about,
2080.
what?
On the 2080 basis of an annual, of a work week, or work year, right, for hours?
So I was doing, if we're looking at
It's figuring hours, not percentage of hours.
So if you're doing 25 hours a week, 25 times 15 is 1,300, or 25 times 52 is 1,300. And 15 times 52 is 780, so I mean, that would be,
2080.
yeah. 1,300 for Chamber Main Street, 780 basically for the city. Currently, if you're paying, right, your total out-of-pocket cost for a chamber director is around a little over 21,000, right?
About 21, yeah, just a little over 21. Now, since we were gonna start at 20.
So if you do 20 and you have to pay, even though you don't have benefits, you're paying FICA, which is
So it's like,
close to 7%, so I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So you're, I think it would be, I think there could be some wonderful opportunities here. My personal preference, and I mean, just throwing this out, would be that we would continue to donate at the same level to chamber that we have. And the chamber would contract for $21,000 a year, 25 hours of service a week from this person. I mean, that way, I think for a membership drive, if you were to say, okay, here's, your costs are remaining about the same, essentially the same as what they were. Your budget is going to look the same if you're going to present it to your shareholders, which really are your shareholders or your membership, whatever. And you can say, yes, our cost for our director is the same. We have a new director, but it is the same amount of money. I mean, that would be my personal preference.
So you're saying not to make them a city employee?
No, go ahead and make them a city employee, but there would be a city employee.
We'd pay, it wouldn't be the $1,250 and the $5,000 or $6,000. He'd want us to come all the way up to 21.
What I'm saying is that they would continue to support the position at the same level that they were supporting when they had a director, which was
21.
Which is 21,000. We would continue to donate 12,500 to the chamber, which, you know, I mean, yes, it would be money going there and back. It would be a wash. But I think in terms of the membership drive, it would, I guess when I donate to things, I like to look at a budget and say, what are your costs? Their cost for their director is 21,000, just as it was before. And we would, and the city would pick up the remainder of that, and the benefits, which are kind of an economic wash for us, in some ways, if we get it into the upcoming budget. At least that's my understanding.
So if they become a city employee, what are you wanting to start them at? What are you wanting their salary to be?
We were talking about 30,000. So that would be 9,000 from the city additional.
So we would still give them the 12,500 that we give them every year plus an additional 9,000.
I mean, that,
Plus benefits also, correct?
yeah. I mean, that's,
We can't take over a property downtown.
City employee. We have paper benefits, like with insurance, right?
well,
Yeah.
we need to move on. But, I don't, I think, I wonder if there's, if, I can't speak, they haven't met at Sac Development Corporation, if they were to kick in some money toward that additional, I mean, even if, I know it's an increase. I mean, I'm just,
You guys need to consider the benefits.
but I think,
You guys, I know a lot of you do, and this has nothing to do with me. I'm just telling you that population decreased in Pocahontas for a reason. Their city council sat down and decided that if they don't make change, nothing's gonna change, it's only gonna get worse. And nobody's gonna stay in that position for 21,000. 30,000 is even questionable, honestly. I mean, it's a good place to start, but something has to change, and that position is doing so much more for this community than a lot of other positions are in the community. And the 25 hours a week that's being spent by Main Street, that's also economic development work that's being done that you're not considering, like writing the CDBG grant for the facade. That's something the city would have had to do. And there's a lot more than that can be done with that.
Do they also have a county director for economic?
They do.
Nice.
Pocahontas just approved last week $17,000 this year for county economic development, besides what they pay for.
So they have their own
City.
SETD,
Yeah, that's.
or
well,
PETD or whatever.
PETD or whatever you call it. Same position. They have a Chloe.
Yeah, they do see the importance of economic development in their county, and it's paying off.
Anybody want to make a motion? So we can move on?
Any more discussion on it? I mean, this is an important discussion. And
I just want to make one comment. I think the consensus of this whole meeting tonight is under one word that Brandy just said: change. We need to think about change.
Well, Steve, I don't have a problem with that, but the problem I can see is you're asking things to change, but the change is coming from us. Nobody else is making a change. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind investing more money if I could see that chamber.
I want to see, I want to see
what
some
you guys are gonna
guidelines
do
set
with that
forth.
money. I have no problem getting.
I want
money.
to see some guidelines set forth. I guess that's my concern, is I'm
That's
afraid
what I'm saying.
that the city's gonna kick in and we're not gonna see any benefit from it. I guess that's my only fear. And I don't know what we can do as a city to make sure that we get some benefit from kicking into it. And I understand, Brandy, what you're saying. I totally understand. And I'm not against change. I tried to make some tonight, but didn't work. Anyhow, I think we need to do some change in this town to better this community. So I'm not against it, don't get me wrong.
No, I totally get what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Because if I was gonna invest money, I'd want the same thing.
Yes.
What is it I'm gonna get out of it? And
So-
and I wanna make sure that every week that time, 15 hours doesn't leak into
Exactly.
just the chamber thing.
Right.
Although there's a lot of overlap, like Brandy said, there's a lot of economic things going on while you're in Chamber Main Street.
Yes.
But you need dedicated time to specific economic development in order to make this a viable deal. And again, that has to do with.
I think the city needs to have some say in who you hire. I think the
Well,
city
it's a
needs to
city,
have.
it would be a
The city
city
hires
position.
them.
It would be a city hire, so
Okay.
we would have that.
It would
Okay.
be a city position, we would contract for, I think, that contracting for services is probably what it would end up being.
Basically.
Because that way, we have control over our portion, and you all have control over, and
So I'm looking more at
oversight
the
over the
9,
whole
like
thing.
Bruce said, or more at the 20,
Now,
like you
would
said.
you be doing the hiring?
You'd have the 12.5 plus anything to get up to the 30. So you're talking about 21.5.
We,
Under
So
would be
More
our,
than what you. So
yeah.
you're
and then you
Just
would
like-
abide by what
Yeah.
Adam
Just
tells
like
them,
on
because
planning and
Adam.
zoning, when they hired the planning and zoning officer, the board had input, got to sit in on the interview. We would want the same thing. We have an interview thing already with specific questions that we've used previously that we would offer to the city in assistance for our side of for those 25 hours. Specific assets that we're looking at in a person that could function in this position.
You know, it sounds like we're searching for, you know, a solution that has specific guidelines with things more concretely specified and written down. Is that an accurate statement? If we were going to go forward?
Yes.
You know, what I would propose is that we have a committee of, you know, some representatives from Chamber and, you know, some representatives from the council, and to meet within the next week or so. I mean, time is of essence. We certainly, you know, so we're looking at the next, you know, meeting in 2 weeks from now, you know, with the understanding that if we're going to go ahead with this or not, that we have these specifics spelled out, the finances, and that we have a report, you know, presented to the council for a vote going
Dale?
forward.
I just want to clarify, this is a position that wouldn't start until your new fiscal year, correct? Because you don't currently have money budgeted for this person.
Correct, but I mean, by the time you post for the position, you go through
Right.
the interview process and you hire somebody, we're talking about probably earliest scenario is April. You're probably talking about a month or two. You're not talking about a 12-month outlay. I mean, that's the soonest you're probably talking about having
Well, that's something that the Chamber needs to know too, because right now we're handling all the Main Street paperwork.
Right.
All that.
Yeah, you know, and this is why I'm talking that time is of essence, so that the chamber has an answer, concrete answer, you know, going forward and in the hiring process, and so that we know what position we're actually hiring for.
Well, Chamber already has a specific job description that lists the duties and responsibilities that if we could marry that with literally the city economic development side, combine those two things together, then the only other thing would be really laying out how it's going to be paid for. I mean, really, you're talking about responsibilities and how it's going to be paid for.
Yeah.
Correct? Am I hearing you all?
That sounds like them.
Those are the two things you're really concerned about.
I agree.
And at the work session, I mean, didn't Adam, you say that you did talk to Pocahontas a year or two ago about what
About
their
2
position
years
was
ago,
like?
yeah.
So, I mean, I think talking to communities like that and how it works out for them, I think is something that you should do as well, because, I mean, what doesn't work, what does work for them, I mean, there's more communities than just Pocahontas that, you know, have a director that is like that.
I think probably the committee could come up with the basics. I don't think we can get an agreement, let's face it, in a week, because there's gonna be a lot of things to work out. But maybe a committee could put together enough to answer your questions about, okay, what would their duties and responsibilities look like, and how would this really work?
Well, basically, you have your job descriptions and pretty well in place
It's
of
all
what's gonna be
done. That's
required,
all-
so
that-
just a matter of figuring out what they can do and what they can do for us.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, I think if I would definitely like to see us pursue this. I mean, I think something, you know, one of the definitions of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. And somehow, I mean, I think that we do need to invest in our community's economic future to move forward. Barry Commoner said there's no such thing as a free lunch. It would be nice if there were, but there isn't. I mean, I think if we could get a subcommittee that would just hammer out, to get rid of some of the concrete details of what we would expect as a city from an economic development person, and perhaps do some research and look at what other economic development directors do, and how that time would be shared. It may not be realistic to say that every week is 25/15. Perhaps we could say every month. I mean, you know,
Right, we talked about that.
Yeah.
It's not realistic to say that it's
Yeah.
all, every week is gonna be 25, 15.
That may not be
Some
realistic,
weeks are
but I
gonna be
mean,
all
I
of
think
it.
if we could come up with some of those kind of things in a subcommittee and come back in 2 weeks.
Okay, so do we have somebody that wants to be on the committee? Gary?
Bruce?
Bruce?
Tom?
Yeah.
Are you planning on doing it in the next week?
Can we do 3 of us on a subcommittee?
If you do more than 2, it's technically a council meeting.
No, Bruce and Tom, I'd be.
Bruce and Tom?
Gary's been
Gary?
around forever. You know, you know how this works. I don't care.
Okay, so Tom and Bruce.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Tom and Bruce can be on the committee to come up with what you think.
Okay.
And then the chamber come up with whoever they want representing them, is that?
That would be me.
That'd be you?
That would be me
Okay.
for right now until we have our meeting, what we should be done. by.
So you three can decide at some point then,
Honestly, I really hadn't gone to that point.
when you wanna meet?
Well, that's the point.
Get together, Bruce and Bobby and
I want you to
Tom.
get that information when we meet, so
Or
I have
you
some
three
idea.
can-
This would be a good place to bring it up.
Adam's
Right now.
gonna have to be involved
You
in
want me
it
to ask
too,
you
of
a
course.
question?
No, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
But I can bring the position description that we have. Brandy, do you have a position description for your economic development side? At your, would you look and see? Because I'd like to have a copy.
I think Gary has a
It might
question,
help
Bobby.
them with the economic development side if they can see somebody else's.
I think Gary has a question for you.
responsibility. I'm
Well,
sorry.
not necessarily for you, I have a
Oh.
question, period, because Bill and I sit on finances, we're looking at budget for next year. And I gotta tell you, our budget is really tight. And I'm sitting there going, where are we gonna pull the money from what department to be able to do this? I mean,
So
we've
it's
gotta
you and
cut
Bill
some-
on our finance?
Yes, Bill and I are both
So
are.
maybe you should be on the committee, Bill, or not? Would you be willing to?
Then then we got a quorum, don't we?
Well, I know, but maybe Tom would not,
I
and
would.
maybe you and
You two
Bruce would?
That we
If
have
you would
both
be
ends of
willing
it
to,
together.
since you've got more of
It
the,
doesn't matter, I don't have to be on either. I mean,
because you have more of the
I'm just
finance
concerned
side
about
of
the money, and you know we've sat there for what, 3.5 hours?
Sure.
Yesterday morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it. So would you be willing to, Bill, then, since you're on the finance side of it?
sure. And then
It's
Adam, you'll meet with us too
Sure.
as well.
So it's Tom,
Bill and Bruce. It's the two Bs.
okay. I just had to update my notes.
And Bobby, it's the three Bs.
And my crew of whatever comes along with it.
Has Chamber had their elections this year? Will
No,
that
no.
possibly change sometime in the next
It
week?
could change next week.
Next week, okay.
Right, next week?
Okay,
Next
moving
week.
on.
Okay.
But I'm still, as the ex-president and a voting member of the chamber for the next year, would still be involved in I would stay involved in this process.
Okay.
If I'm not the president, I will still be involved as the ex-president,
is there a time,
helping the new president to work on this project,
so
so.
is there a time that we can set to meet here, or are you sticking around for the rest of the meeting? And
No,
we
I'm supposed to be at another meeting right now.
Well,
So-
I'm gonna be gone all of next week,
Okay, so what's the rest
How
of
about
this
this
week like?
I'll be here until Friday.
And I've scheduled facade meetings for all day Friday.
How about tomorrow? Or Thursday?
Wednesday or Thursday, I'll
But
make whatever works.
Thursday's the only day I can.
Thursday's the only day you could, so it looks like it's Thursday.
Okay, so what, Community Foundation meets at 7 o'clock, what if we did 8 o'clock?
Okay.
Where, here.
Is that AM or PM?
That's, that's 8 freaking AM.
We can do both.
It might be going till 8 PM.
Is that gonna be here?
It meets, the foundation meets here, so why don't we
Oh,
just go
okay.
ahead and meet here if that
8
would work?
o'clock on Thursday?
Thursday.
You know, and anyone else that you know, from the
Right.
chamber board, you know.
I'll bring the position description, I'll bring our current interview questions.
Brandy, if you can find that other
I'll
thing.
try and think of, and if Brandy
Before
can,
then.
see if she has an economic development job description, that might help you all put your stuff together on your side, if you have that.
Honestly, remember how bad that, I've only been there 6 weeks.
Okay. Are we
Yes.
good?
Yes,
All right, on to D, discussion of pool policies.
I don't expect anything out of the council tonight on this issue. It's simply a reminder that during the season last year, we made changes to the pool passes. and we kind of left it with the indication that during the off-season, we would reevaluate the system and talk about making a new system for next year. I wanted to get in the hands of the council. These were some of the things that were thrown around last year. I also gave you within the memo an explanation of what actually was approved as far as the policy through the end of last year. So what I would ask the council members to do is kind of educate themselves, remind themselves on this issue, and be prepared for us to have a further discussion 2 weeks from now with the hopes of hammering out, or at least starting the process of hammering out, a policy for next season.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion on that? How much is this gonna involve a lot more work with our people, or a lot more complicated than it was prior to this? Because my recommendation would be is go back to the way it was. Sandy, how many people did that affect when we made the emergency change last year? As far as many families were affected by that?
Was it
If
4?
you, I mean, yeah, it wasn't that many. If we would go back to what the policy was, that was written under Mike Fisher's reign.
Which is the IRS system.
Correct.
So my point is, why make a complete wholesale change if it's not really necessary?
I can tell you one thing we did figure out works much better, just in looking, as far as change, that's going to be more beneficial, because a pool is like many things, there's a lot of, it's kind of like a ball game at school. A lot of people walk in and don't pay. It's the same thing. I think we did learn, because you have kids doing it at the window. One thing we definitely learned is we would be silly not to continue to sell the passes at the office as opposed to at the pool.
Okay.
Along with several that had looked into it, and you know, Trevor did a lot of work on that, and I think it has some merit, and that is actually a pass that they have to take with them that has their picture on it.
Okay.
That's what they did at the community center, not necessarily the
Okay.
picture, but they have some kind of a
And he
ID
looked
card
at
you have to carry now
a,
with
looked
you.
at a system that we could get at a fairly reasonable
That's a good
cost
thing.
to do that.
'Cause I was
Which
talking-
brings it to, you know,
And in the
individual
end-
people, however you do it. If you sell it, just, everybody has to have an individual pass, or you're gonna, you know, do the, you know, that's the whole other issue. But definitely, if nothing else, that the passes would be sold. And punch passes would be kept with individuals as opposed to, because there again, they don't get pulled, punched, whatever.
Well, and that ID thing, I mean, that in the long run could pay for itself if they.
Exactly.
So we could do this
And that's the
without
feeling that
real
it
major
would.
changes then? Okay.
Can we dig up some information on that for the next meeting?
See, I
when we
asked
discuss
that, I
it,
asked
please?
him about that, and he said, we're not the only ones with the same problem. They're all trying to.
Yeah,
But that could
Carol
help.
in
I mean, that could
particular.
pay for itself
And
in
we're
the
talking
end,
the bigger
really.
boys
Yeah.
too, not just us. our
So
size
dig up some
smaller groups.
information.
Carol
on that
in
so we can
particular was
discuss
trying to
that.
figure out what they're going to do in the future, because they knew that they needed to be making changes and weren't sure how they were going to go about that.
Yeah, I'd say bring some information on that for the next meeting, please.
As I said, today was just about getting the information, kind of getting you back into the ball game so that we could start to be prepared to talk about it in 2 weeks.
Just give us 2 weeks to anticipate the pleasure.
I would still recommend you guys consider the discussions we had last year, because there still are handhelds out there like mine, and like Mike Fisher's old system is outdated, and it's legally not right. And there will be people in here again that will have a problem with paying for 2 household passes for 1 household.
And that's why I think the office, meaning office pool recommendation would be each individual person would have a pass purchased, as opposed to any, there would not be a family pass.
Yeah.
It would be all.
Yeah.
That way everybody has a photo
Yep.
ID.
Yep.
You couldn't really use somebody else's pass to come
Then there's no
in.
question whether
I
it was a
agree.
family.
That's one of the things,
Yeah.
we weren't, I wasn't really going to bring it up tonight, but it's one of the things we've
Yeah.
discussed
I think that's,
internally.
yeah, because you don't have your traditional families anymore.
Yeah.
That IRS system might have been good in one day, but, okay, on to, any more discussion over that poll? On to E. Consideration of resolution number 2015-01 entitled Resolution Authorizing Tax Abatement for Liens on Property Known as 510 Platt Street, Sac City, Iowa, resulting from Chapter 50 nuisance violations.
This was requested by the council at the last council meeting pursuant to the request by Les Gilson.
Okay. Any discussion regarding this?
Do you have to introduce it or just move it?
It is a resolution, it doesn't require an introduction.
It's an introduction, which is a first.
Yeah, a first and a second, yeah.
So I will introduce resolution number 2015-01.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to introduce the resolution. Any discussion on it? Okay. We need a motion?
It's moved.
Let's move, okay. Okay.
Councilperson Bruner,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
motion carried.
We don't need to close that, do we? We're good? Okay.
Good.
Okay, F, consideration of resolution 2015-02 entitled Resolution Establishing Administrative Rules for the Nuisance Assistance Revolving Loan Fund.
A little bit of information on this. At your council location today, there were updated versions. It was brought to our attention that the one in the packet, for some odd reason, had meshed the resolution and the administrative rules all into one page. It was actually supposed to be one page with the resolution on it and 2 pages with the actual administrative rules on it. So there was a new copy sitting at your location that included all 3 of those pages. The resolution itself is pretty simple. The details, the nuts and bolts of this are actually found in the administrative rules. The administrative rules describe most of the terms. Of course, there'd be certain things to be written into the application itself that you wouldn't see actually included in the administrative rules, but it goes over the generic form of the plan. You might remember we were approached by the Planning and Zoning Commission with the idea of establishing a revolving loan for the purposes of assisting people in abating nuisances that they had been charged with a nuisance situation on their property. And there was some framework to that discussed at the council meeting at that time, and I was asked to go to a P&Z meeting and negotiate with the P&Z board on finalizing a little bit more terminology on that. These administrative rules is what came out of a result of that conversation. I know we have at least one P&Z member lurking in the back of the room tonight, and and so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to go over it with you. Primarily the way it works is the revolving loan is funded on an as-needed basis instead of being dumped over all at one time and setting aside in that fund source. It is purely a fund source that would be feeded on an as-needed basis. The idea behind it was they thought they would use some of the money that they have set aside for them that has been set aside for them in the budgets up till through next year, which includes the money for demolition of properties that's currently in there. And so those 2 uses are somewhat tied together as far as the availability of the funds.
So this is basically a budget neutral event then.
Correct. At least for one more fiscal year. Through June of next year, it would be a fiscally neutral element. Past that point, nothing is allocated. Nothing is, of course, approved nor allocated for those purposes. The council's previously approved to give P&Z access to a certain amount of funds through that time period. So,
Did Laura call you regarding the revolving loan fund today then? Did Laura Zimmer?
yes, she came in. Yes.
Okay. Okay,
I
so.
would introduce and move resolution number 2015-02, a resolution establishing administrative rules for the nuisance assistance revolving loan fund.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Sandy?
Councilperson Hanson,
Yes.
McGinty.
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
Bruning,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. Public input on solid waste matters. Okay. On to council forum. Adam?
I'll be happy to share that this Thursday is the Northwest Iowa League meeting down in Carroll. The program for the night will be discussing City Week, which is a week during, I believe, the month of October. That is, and the League of Cities is pushing that idea, and so they'll be down there discussing expansions in how to promote that program. The other things, as you heard earlier today, we have now had a few meetings associated with the Finance Committee. The intent is to have preliminary information before the council members at the next council meeting. Of course, it likely won't be complete because we still have the outstanding questions about Chamber Main Street that aren't incorporated in there.